Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Middle East Report. I'm here today in the Israeli Embassy in London to discuss the recent visit by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington, in which he spoke to AIPAC, the American Public Affairs Committee, warning of the dangers of a nuclear Iran that poses not only to Israel, the Arab world, but also to the West, and the challenges that Israel face in confronting the Iranian threat. We'll also be discussing the state of the Middle East peace process, and final issue we'll be discussing is the issue of women and the plight of women in comparison to those in the Arab world. And today I'm joined on the Middle East Report by Israeli Knesset member, Dr. Anat Wilf. Hello, and it's a real pleasure and a privilege to interview someone of such caliber, an Israeli member of parliament.
Thank you.
Anat, can you tell us how you got involved in politics and what led you to become a member of the Israeli Knesset?
I've always been very passionate about public service in Israel, about anything that stood at the intersection of Israel, the Jewish people, and the world at large. I've always been very keen to serve as much as possible in presenting the cause of Israel abroad. And for many years, I did my academic work, I studied, I worked in business, but I realized that ultimately, if I was to engage in the things that I cared about, politics was the only way to go. And about 10 years ago, I became more serious about entering politics. I started volunteering with several key politicians, and then I ultimately started working as a foreign policy aide to then Vice Prime Minister Shimon Peres, now our president. And then I decided to try to make it on our own. I ran a couple of times and was able to get elected into parliament about 2 years ago, and have been enjoying my work ever since.
So what was it like to work for Shimon Peres? He's really the elder statesman of Israel, and he's certainly been there since the foundation and the creation of the State of Israel in 1948.
It's remarkable, and it's a privilege. There's a saying, I think, in the US, to drink from a fire hydrant, and there's all of these things thrown at you, and that was certainly the feeling of working for Shimon Peres. On a daily basis, he meets with heads of states, his vision, his thinking about the future. He cares so deeply about Israel and the Jewish people and Israel's standing in the world and on the world stage, and he's such a remarkable figure. I mean, it was a true privilege.
And what are the issues that you are so passionate about that you advocate in the Knesset?
So my key issues, first of all, of course, is the issue of foreign affairs, and especially the standing of Israel, the image of Israel, how we're viewed abroad, and the intellectual battle that we're engaged in for Israel's standing and legitimacy. Domestically, I invest a lot in education, in protecting and saving our public education system, and especially standing up for teachers, for their rights, for their authority, being a voice for teachers and making sure that teachers get whatever they need in order to be good teachers. I do a lot of work that has to do with women and the status of women in Israel, and also economics a bit. I'm one of the people who's fighting to have less concentration of economic control in the hands of the few in Israel. So these are my key issues.
And what is it like being a woman in the Israeli parliament? I mean, we've seen images on our own TV screens that it's a very lively, very dynamic environment. What's it like to work as a woman in the Knesset?
Well, luckily, being a woman in parliament is no longer a big deal. We have 120 members of parliament, and we have now 24 women out of 120. So that puts us at 20%. I think it's about comparable to the British Parliament, the American Congress, the French Assemblée. So we're not in a bad place, but certainly not where I think we should be, which is 40 and 50% and even more. But with 24 women, with 20%, it's no longer unique or very special to be a woman. There are many other women in different political positions. So sometimes we're on the same side of the issue, sometimes we're on different sides of the issue. But I must say that I'm happy to be in Parliament at a time when really being a woman is truly no longer very special.
That's a shame in a way, but also good in another.
Well, ultimately, that's the purpose. I mean, if we think about where we want to go, we want to reach a day where being a woman is a non-issue, that it's not special, and we're moving there, we're getting there.
And you are a member of the, Hachot Party, or
Yes.
the Independence Party, and you led a breakaway away from the Labour Party. What are the reasons for setting up this new party led by the Defence Minister Hud Barak, and what is the ideological position of your party?
In our political system, basically parties can break if at least a third of the members feel that they can no longer live with the other two-thirds. And this is what happened. The Labour Party has been in a long process of decline. It reached a situation of complete dysfunctionality, with people pushing it in very different, pushing and pulling in different directions. And ultimately, we could no longer live together. There were those who wanted to take the Labour Party into a very leftist, socialist direction. There were those like us who felt that the roots of the Israeli Zionist Labour Party were more centrist, with emphasis on security, on the need to build Israel's strength and power. I think Ehud Barak, the defense minister, epitomizes that old Zionist labor ideology. So we basically broke with the Labour Party. They went into opposition and have really coalesced into a socialist, I would say even a socialist militant party. And we have gone to the center. We have joined the coalition and put a lot of emphasis on the security. And even though we're certainly proponents of peace and the search for peace, we have no illusions about the region where we are and about our neighbors and their intentions.
And in the course of this program, I've done a lot of research, and you mentioned a lot about David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister. How much does he mean to you, and how much of the policies that he put in place that really steered the early years during the foundation of the State of Israel in 1948 has really shaped modern politics, and certainly that of your political party?
He is certainly one of the most important, I think, global leaders in the 20th century, certainly one of the most important Jewish leaders in the last 3,000 years, and a source of tremendous inspiration for me, for my party. He set the foundations for the State of Israel. He was tremendously courageous. He had a rare combination of vision and pragmatism. His ability to imagine the impossible and then make it happen is really what makes Israel exist as a thriving country today. And I think he was a man of peace, but again, he knew very well that peace can only come if Israel is strong, if Israel is powerful, and that our neighbors will accept us only once they understand that they cannot vanquish us.
I want to discuss the issue of Iran now. Today is Purim. It's a day where the Jewish people around the world remember the story of Esther in the Bible, and how that Haman threatened annihilation to annihilate the Jewish people through ethnic genocide. And we see through Esther the amazing work she did in delivering her people, the Jewish people in Iran. And today, in Iran today, there is an Iranian President Ahmadinejad who calls again for the genocide of the Jewish people. How dangerous is the threat of a nuclear Iran, not only to Israel, the Arab world, but also to the West?
Well, we certainly believe it's a grave danger. You correctly pointed out that in many ways we Jews live in circular time. We always look back to our history. Our history is very present, the immediate history, the biblical, ancient history. We do view our history as one where there is in every generation, that is also what we say in Passover, which is coming soon. We talk about the fact that in every generation there are those who try to annihilate the Jews, and we are ultimately able to emerge strong from that. But yeah, there is a sense that there's a grave danger The Iranian regime has shown itself as one that does not play by the rules, one that sponsors terrorism, and there is deep concern that were they to acquire nuclear weapons, they would not behave responsibly, and it's the kind of risk that the world can't take, and certainly we in Israel cannot afford to take.
But the world seems to be apathetic on this issue. Maybe calling for stronger sanctions to work, but certainly edging away from any military confrontation. When even through the WikiLeaks affairs, we've been very revealing in the fact that the Saudis of calling on the Americans to cut the head of the snake, essentially meaning Iran. President of Egypt, Mubarak, before he fell, warned that Iran poses an existential threat to Egypt and the Arab world, and there's certainly alarm in the Arab world, not only Israel, and also making the same arguments that Israel's making. But in the West, in Europe and the United States, is there the political will to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons?
More and more so. I mean, you're absolutely right that I think for many years there was a different assessment between Israel and perhaps Western countries regarding the gravity of the danger. But today, I don't think there's any difference in terms of the assessment of the threat. Now it's more about what is the proper course of action, what should be done so that this threat does not materialize. But if in the past there was a difference about assessing the threat, this is not the situation today. You could have heard it in the speeches of not only the American president and various European heads of states and the Canadian president and prime minister, but also you could hear it in members of Congress. So there's an understanding that this is a grave threat. The question is now, what is the most effective course of action in order to counter that threat?
And what do you believe that course of action should be?
Ultimately, the people who can stop the Iranian nuclear program are the Iranians. And they have to understand that it is in their own self-interest to do so. Sanctions are one way of doing it, and the threat of force, which no one wants to use, but needs to be there, and of course might be used if there will be no other choice. But I think the key issue is that the Iranian people themselves need to understand that it is in their own self-interest to stop that program. And I think many of them are beginning to understand that, and whatever we can do in the world to help them understand that it is in their own best interest would be the most beneficial course of action.
Your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, recently visited Washington, where he had a press conference with the President Obama. He also addressed Congress, and he also addressed AIPAC, the American Public Affairs Committee. I just want to know what you think of his statement. He says here that Israel has waited patiently for the international community to resolve this issue. We've waited for diplomacy to work. We've waited for sanctions to work. None of us can afford to wait much longer. As Prime Minister of Israel, I will never let my people live in the shadow of annihilation. My impression of this quote is that Israel and the West probably only have a short period of time before Iran develops nuclear weapons. Are we likely to see military action in the near future?
I don't know. No one knows. And the Prime Minister himself has made it very clear that he has not made any such decision yet. But what he did do in his speeches and his meetings, he made it very clear that as Prime Minister of Israel, his responsibility is to the people of Israel. And he also made it clear that by definition, there will be structural differences between the way in which Israel views the situation and the way that the United States or other countries view the situation. And that has nothing to do with personal chemistry or personalities or who happens to be in the White House or who happens to be the Prime Minister of Israel. These are structural geopolitical differences that just have to do with the fact that the way that Israel views threats and the way that America views threats, given their geographies, given where they're situated, is different. And what the Prime Minister of Israel made it clear is that he has a responsibility to the people of Israel, and he cannot forfeit his responsibility to anyone else. And he made it very clear, and I think any head of state would do the same thing.
I recently visited Brussels. I had high-level meetings at the Israeli embassy in Brussels, both with their delegation to Belgium and to the EU, and met many Jewish leaders in the Jewish community in Brussels. And what I came away with was very shocking. In a sense, there's a rise in anti-Semitism across Europe. And again, we were seeing the Iranian president calling for genocide against the Jewish people. We have Hamas in their covenant charter calling for the destruction of the state of Israel and genocide against the Jewish people. And we remember the horrors that took place during the Holocaust. Has the world learnt the lessons that if the Jewish people are threatened, then the world becomes threatened?
I'm not sure that everyone understands that. And anti-Semitism never went away. It just mutates. It finds new forms in which to express itself. If it is not a religious form, then it's a racial form. If it's not a racial form, then it becomes a national form. Today we see in some places a virulent form of anti-Israel rhetoric that is only thinly masking an ancient form of anti-Semitism. We see it particularly among the European left, couched in the language of human rights, which makes it even more crazy. And I think not many people understand that it often starts with the Jews, it never ends with the Jews, and that we do tend to be the target of dangerous trends that ultimately threaten the world at large. We just tend to be more sensitive to them. So whereas other people might not view them so seriously, Israel, the Jewish people, are likely to see them before others do. It is a sad fact that not everyone recognizes it, but it's our job to make sure that as many people as possible understand that what we see, ultimately, they will see as well.
I mean, coming from the Christian community, we see these threats and we see the rise of anti-Semitism, and it's something that we're not going to put up with. And this is why I'm so grateful for you to come on and appear on the Middle East Report today, because we need Christians to galvanise and to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, to be a voice for them. And really to do what we can to stamp out anti-Semitism, which is horrific, and the consequences of anti-Semitism are devastating. Is there more that the Christian community could do to help Israel and the Jewish people?
I think it's also important to highlight what's going on in the Arab world. The Arab world today is the place where you find forms of anti-Semitism that are no longer acceptable in the rest of the world. Caricatures that look like 1930s Germany. And you're seeing now with the persecution of Christians in the Arab world that there are very strong trends. I mean, initially they got rid of Jewish communities that existed in the Arab world for more than 1,000 years. Now we're seeing a form of getting rid of Christian communities around the Arab world. And it's very important that Christians highlight the fact that we are seeing very intolerant trends, and it's not about Israel and it's not about the Jews. As I said, it starts with us, it never ends with us. So I think as the Christian community highlights also what's happening to the Christians in the Arab world, this is also very important for the future of these revolutions, and I think for the future of peace in the region in general.
Talking about the Arab world, is there not a great danger with the Arab Spring that it's turning into Islamist revolution? It looks like the Muslim Brotherhood are set to take power in Egypt. They're threatening to break the peace accord known as the Camp David peace accords with Israel. We're seeing the rise of militant Islam across the Middle East, and surely a day will come where Israel is even more isolated in the region than before, and being the only true beacon of light of freedom and democracy in what is appearing to be a very dark region.
Well, we've been always isolated in this region. There has never been an acceptance. Even when there were peace agreements, there has never been an acceptance of the legitimate claim of the Jewish people to their land. And as a result, Israel, even with peace agreements, has always been very isolated. But of course, we see the rise of Muslim parties because they reflect more accurately the popular will, which for a very, very long time was not expressed in various dictatorships. And I think we're going to see at least 2 to 3 decades, if not more, of Islamist rule before we can see something that we can recognize as modern liberal democracies. But that is obviously the first wave, because for a very long time this has been the popular will, but it just found no way of expression.
And talking about onto the Middle East peace process, do you believe that through the peace process, if a Palestinian state is created, that would be the end of the conflict?
I don't know. I've become more skeptical over the years. I used to belong to those who believed very certainly that the day that a Palestinian state would come into being is the day that we would have peace and Israel would find itself in peace with its neighbors. I have become increasingly skeptical. I wonder if the whole conflict with the Palestinians is not merely an excuse to continue isolating Israel in the region, to continue the conflict with Israel, because at the core, whether these are Palestinians or other Arab countries, there is no acceptance of the basic claim that underpins Israel, which is that the Jewish people as a people have a legitimate right to have their own country in what is their country and has always been their country for thousands of years, and which they always wanted to return to. So I'm not sure. I think we have made the peace process kind of the belief that this is the be-all and end-all, but we do need to remember that Israel today is still isolated in the Arab and the Muslim world, and its legitimate claim to the land of Israel is still denied and rejected, and even the historical relationship between the Jews and the land of Israel is denied.
And how can the Palestinian Authority effectively have legitimacy in the international community when they have entered into a government of national unity with Hamas? And Hamas is declared as a terrorist organisation by the EU, by Britain, by the United States. As I said previously in the interview, in the Hamas Charter, they call for the destruction of the State of Israel, but also genocide against the Jewish people. How can the international body, such as the UN, such as the EU, such as the United States, accept this legitimacy?
They don't, and they should continue not to accept it. But we do need to understand that even more moderate Palestinian people, even the more moderate government, they too do not accept the legitimacy of the Jewish claim in the land of Israel. So we need to understand that at the core of the conflict, there is still that ongoing denial that the Jews have any business being in the land of Israel to begin with. And that's the intellectual battle that we need to win before we can even begin to make peace. Until there is an acceptance that the Jews have a real legitimate claim to the land of Israel, and that is why the two people need to have two separate states, not because Israel is strong, but because it's a legitimate claimant to the land. Until we win that intellectual battle, I don't believe we can have true and durable peace.
Isn't there a great danger, though, that Britain, Western Europe, and also the United States are putting huge pressure upon Israel to make territorial concessions in the name for peace with Fatah, and maybe Fatah's here today, but would be overthrown by Hamas, and that Israel would face a militant Islamic extremist government in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, which would then pose serious security threats to the State of Israel?
I think right now this is not the moment. I think right now there is no pressure on Israel to make territorial concessions, because you're seeing what's happening in the Sinai Peninsula and what's happening in Egypt. You're seeing what's happening in Syria and the Golan Heights. And the notion that Israel, and of course you're seeing what's happened in the Gaza Strip. So the notion that Israel can withdraw from territories in exchange for long-term peace and security is actually being undermined. No one in their right mind is now pressuring Israel to engage in that kind of territorial exchange. And I think there is a growing understanding that to make peace, it's not just about territory, but it's about the legitimacy of Israel in the region. And it used to be thought that first you have peace and then you have legitimacy. I think people understand that first there has to be legitimacy. First, there has to be an acceptance that Israel and the Jewish people have a legitimate claim to the land of Israel, and then you can make peace.
I really want to talk about an issue that you're very passionate about, and something I haven't covered on the Middle East report before, and that's the plight of women, not only in Israel but in the Middle East. You wrote an excellent article in which you said that women are the bellwether of Arab revolutions. What did you mean by that statement?
As we're looking at the Arab revolutions and we're thinking, where are they going to go? Are they going to live up to the promise of the young people in the square, of an open democracy where men and women are equal, or are we going to see dark Islamist dictatorships or regimes? I think the people to look at are the women, and the women are going to tell us where these revolutions are going. If we're going to see women being more equal, more free to pursue education, to pursue marriage the way they want to have as many or as few children as they want, to marry as late as they want, to have higher education, to be in the job market. If we see that women are able to do that, then we will know that the Arab revolutions are truly living up to their early promise, and they are heading in a direction that we can all appreciate and value. If we will see that women are being basically relegated to traditional roles, that their freedoms are fewer and fewer, we will know that the revolutions are heading in a very, very dangerous direction. I can tell you that as a woman in Israel, this is exactly what I'm looking at. For a very long time, the claim was that Israel should do more to try to integrate into the Middle East and into the region. And my answer would be, as a modern, independent woman, there is nothing around me in the region for miles in any direction that I see that I want to be a part of and that I want to be integrated into. And there's nothing that would make me happier to be in a place where women are viewed as equals in countries around us. Israel is very proud of being the only democracy in the Middle East, but it's not our goal. Our goal is to be the first democracy in the Middle East, and one day just to be one among many, and to see around us democracies that value the equality between men and women, that protect minorities, Jews and Christians, and then we will know that Israel can truly find peace and security in the region.
Can you tell our viewers, what's the difference between the plight of women in Israel and the opportunities that women have in Israel? And clearly you've shown that Israel is a very meritocratic society, that you've reaching the pinnacle of Israeli politics by being a member of the Israeli Knesset. How does that compare to women in the Arab world and Iran?
Oh, there's a sea of difference. I mean, the situation of women in Israel is equal to the situation in most developed Western countries. We have similar problems, similar challenges. The challenges that you will see for women in most developed economies are the challenges that you will see in Israel. In the Arab world, the challenges are still the challenges of centuries ago. The right of women to basically even be independent, to decide who they can marry, how many children they can have, to truly be sovereign. It's true that within Israel we have smaller religious Arab or very ultra-Orthodox Jewish societies that in some way live in more ancient times and preserve what I view as patriarchal, chauvinistic relationships between men and women in the name of tradition and religion. And part of our challenge as a modern democracy is how do we make sure that these communities, while respecting their tradition and religion, that we make sure that women are treated as sovereign equals. But especially when it comes to women, to the treatment of minorities, to the treatment of gays, I mean, between Israel and the Arab world, there's a sea of difference.
And why is that?
Oh, I mean, they're just fundamentally different value societies. Israel is a modern, open democracy that believes in the equality of men and women, that was founded on the idea of the equality of men and women. At the core, it adopts the Enlightenment ideas of the sovereignty of the individual, the equality of all people. And Arab societies are in many ways still emerging from very, very traditional societies, very religious, especially as we see Islam getting stronger, more radicalized. Women tend to be the first victims of that. These are fundamentally different societies. Hopefully, this will not be the case forever.
The famous Middle East historian Bernard Lewis, in a recent article, quoted this about women in the Middle East, which I found fascinating. He said that in the 1800s, there was a debate in Turkey. The Turks had the Ottoman Empire, which controlled virtually all the Middle East and North Africa, and in the Muslim world, saying that they were losing battles against the Europeans, and that they are lagging behind in terms of technology and advancement. And Bernard Lewis quotes a Turkish writer called Nimak Kamel. And this is what he said. He said, "The reason we have fallen behind the West is the way that we treat our women." He said that by the way we treat our women, the way we do produce, this produces several negative results. First and foremost, we must submit, we deprive ourselves of talent and the services of half our population. We submit the early education of the entire population down to trodden mothers. I mean, that's incredible foresight for a Turkish writer.
Remarkable.
Why does the Turkey now and the other Middle Eastern states don't take this advice on board?
Well, this is as true today as it was when it was written more than 200 years ago. Turkey, by the way, is in a different situation. It's a much more modern, open country. Women are in a very different situation in Turkey than they are in other Arab countries. But ultimately, the force of feminism, women's liberation, has been the most radical force, the most revolutionary force across the world. Societies that give more power to women, more equality to women, are deeply transformed. And the situation of women is the mark of a progressive society. You want to know if a society is progressive, if it's thriving, if it's successful, look at the situation of women, look at the schooling of young girls. This is the main mark of advancement in society. And societies that refuse to embrace advancement, modernity, tend to put down their women. And what you read is absolutely true. And until the Arab world understands that they have to treat women equally, as equal, sovereign, independent people, they will continue to be mired in the past rather than move to the future.
Got a clip to go to now that looks at the plight of women in Iran. What is your reaction to the treatment of Iranian women when the Islamic Republic of Iran is being governed under Sharia law? And Sharia law, according to Bernard Lewis, states that a woman is half that of a man, a daughter gets one half of what a son gets. in a testimony, 2 women are equal to 1 man. How can Iranian and other women facing oppression in the Middle East be empowered?
We have to be honest and admit that all religions at the core have been patriarchal. We have been able to progress by moving beyond that, and while respecting religion, understanding that we need to change our laws to reflect our belief that men and women are equal. And that's also what needs to be happening in Iran. It's true that Iran has done a lot for women's education, but still women in Iran are not in the place that I believe women should be, as independent, sovereign people that can shape their own fate. And again, any society that mistreats women essentially mistreats itself. You cannot have a successful, open, thriving country while mistreating your women. It just doesn't work together.
I've got many close friends in Israel, and it's a privilege having Israeli friends. One of my closest friends, her sister, is just entered into the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, where she's serving, I think, 1.5, maybe 2 years military service. What is the contribution that women make for the defense of the Jewish state?
We serve in the military. I served as an intelligence officer for 4 years. It was an excellent service, and I enjoyed it very much. Women serve in the military, and I'm also happy that in the last 2 decades, we've made great progress in having more and more women in even the top kind of the most intense jobs in the military. We have more and more fighter pilots who are women and who are very, very good fighter pilots, more women who are in combat positions, certainly in intelligence and various highly skilled pieces of the military. So there has been tremendous advancement in women's equality within the military and in general within society, but we always push for more.
But it also goes back to the very founding of the state, doesn't it? That many women served in combat positions during Israel's War of Independence, which was a real desperate battle, and proved their worth on the battlefield.
Oh, absolutely. Because Israel had to fight for its survival from day one, it was never an issue of, okay, we're just going to rely on the men. There was always a sense that the men and the women are critical to ensure Israel's future survival, and we never went back on that. Men and women have been serving in the military from day one.
Can you just share a little bit about what your personal experience was, like serving in intelligence? Well, obviously not giving any intelligence secrets away, but certainly saying what your experience was in the Israeli.
My personal experience in the Israeli Defense Forces has been extremely rewarding. Especially when you work in intelligence, the sense of equality between men and women is great because it's all about your brains, not your brawns. So that has also been a wonderful experience. One of the amazing things is that when you're drafted into the military at the age of 18, we have a universal draft. You kind of look around you and you realize that essentially the state of Israel is protected by kids. I mean, you have 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and they are shouldering the burden of the protection of Israel, and it's quite remarkable to see that we get so much responsibility at such a young age, and sometimes you go through your whole life never getting so much responsibility as much as you had when you were in the military.
But does that make Israel more of a special nation, in a sense, giving teenagers a huge responsibility to defend the state of Israel, maybe prepares them greater in life, and that's probably why Israel is leading the world in so many fields in terms of technology, science, and other areas?
It's certainly having so much responsibility at an early age changes you. Israel does have a very strong entrepreneurial strain that comes from the notion that you can assume responsibility for big stuff at an early age. So this is a big part of who we are, and Israel by definition is a unique country. The Natan Sharansky, who was a Soviet dissident and immigrated to Israel, he said that you do not put the chosen people in the Holy Land and expect something normal to come out of it. So Israel was always destined to be a unique and not normal country.
The IDF puts an emphasis on the issue of women in the military. Great strides have already been made, with 90% of all positions in the IDF open to women. We are proud to recognize the female soldiers of the IDF on the ground, in the air, and on the seas, serving as pilots in combat positions in the field, doctors, instructors, and engineers. It is this firm commitment that led to the creation of a co-ed combat battalion, Caracal, which is over 70% female. But you don't need to go to the field to find these soldiers. You can also find them in observation posts around the borders, or serving in a variety of home front positions. These women make up 34% of our military, the highest percentage in the world. 2011 was a landmark year for women in the IDF, with the largest number of pilots graduating the elite flight course, and the appointment of the first female major general. The IDF provides a warm home to all its soldiers, females alike, and in honor of International Women's Day, I wish women everywhere happiness, the tools to accomplish their dreams, and the support of their loved ones. Top our female soldiers who work tirelessly to keep us safe. I personally thank you for your contribution and wish you joy, personal growth, and the greatest success.
I want to talk to you about Zionism, because the term Zionism is so misunderstood.
True.
And it's been so attacked. But Zionism really means the political ideology that allows the Jewish people to return to their ancient covenant homeland and have their own Jewish state. And really, who can argue against that? Is Zionism still relevant to Israel and the Jewish people today?
It is incredibly relevant, and you're right. People forget that it is a very simple term that says this is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people expressing their desire to return to their ancient homeland. You said who can argue with that? Apparently a lot of people are arguing with that, and that's part of the problem. While there are, I think, 3/4 of the world's countries make less sense than Israel in terms of their kind of coherence, Israel is the only country that is being questioned still today for its foundational idea, which is why we need to continue to defend it. As sad as it is that 64 years after our establishment, we need to continue to defend our foundational idea. This is extremely relevant, both the intellectual defense of the idea of Zionism, the continued building of Israel. We are far from secure, we are far from settled. This is still one of the biggest projects, I think, of humankind in the last 100 years. I think it's a remarkable project, one that gives a lot of meaning and purpose to many people. I think many people around the world are looking to Israel to see how we deal with our challenges, what we're able to achieve. So Zionism is as relevant today as it was 64 years ago. And we should remember that in the life of the Jewish people, being a sovereign country is a very, very new phenomena. We've been for 2,000 years a people without our sovereign country, without a state, without our self-governance. So readjusting to a life of self-governance, of sovereignty, is new to us in our 3,000-year history. So I'm a big believer in the importance of Zionism and in the defense of Zionism globally against those who try to present it as anything other than the national liberation movement of the Jewish people.
I mean, what I find so crazy, and it just makes absolutely no sense to me at all, is the fact that we've had so many new nations emerge, certainly since the fall of the Soviet Union in '89. I think the latest nation to join the family of nations is Sudan. And yet all these new nations, all these new countries that have split away from other countries, their legitimacy isn't questioned.
Exactly.
But there is only one Jewish state. And sadly, that the state of Israel's very legitimacy and very right to exist is questioned in so many academic and intellectual circles.
You're absolutely right. And this is, as you said, crazy. Like you said, most of the world's countries make less sense than Israel. Israel is a very coherent idea. The Jewish people is an ancient people asking for their sovereign self-determination in their ancient homeland, the coherence of land, language, people, tradition, history is much more than the coherence of many other countries. And yet this foundational idea is still being questioned. And more people around the world, Israelis, Jews, lovers of Israel, friends of Israel, need to make battle, an intellectual battle, not a physical one, in order to defend the very idea, the simple idea, that the Jewish people, as a nation, have the right to self-determination in their ancient homeland. Such a simple idea, a powerful idea, but one that many are still trying to attack.
And do you have we're down to the last 5 minutes of the interview, and it's been a riveting interview so far. Have you got a message for our viewers?
Do I have a message? Well, first of all, I really want to thank those who support Israel and who are friends of Israel, who take the time, because I know that it's not always easy. And we need to understand that sadly, there are still those who try to undermine and attack Israel, not only physically, but intellectually in the idea. And I want to say why it's important, because we always talk about physical threats, but intellectual threats are no less important, because Israel is first and foremost an idea. We exist because there's a powerful idea that has brought us into existence. And those who undermine this idea, they know that if the idea of Israel will become illegitimate, Israel will be weaker, which is why it's so important to defend the very legitimacy of Zionism, the very legitimacy of the idea that makes Israel what it is, because it's our vulnerability, but also it's our greatest strength. The idea that you can take an insane idea and make it into a thriving, prosperous reality.
Which Israel is today.
Absolutely.
And it's a pleasure to stand with Israel and the Jewish people. I want to talk to you about your political ambitions. I think sitting here before me is certainly a future Israeli foreign minister, if not a prime minister. Is this a role that you could see yourself in, possibly in the near future?
Thank you, and that's very kind. At the end of the day, what I wish for myself is to be able to have a long, long career in the service of Israel, in the service of the Jewish people, and to be in the intersection of Israel, the Jewish people, and the world at large. Anything I can do to serve Israel and the Jewish people on the world stage, I will be truly honored to do.
Because what I'm so impressed about is your academic and your intellectual ability to conceptualize ideas, policies in defense of Israel and the Jewish people at an incredible level that people can understand. And I think in terms of Israeli hasbara and PR, the more that Israel can get you in front of the TV screens, I think the more arguments Israel will win, not only in the arena of international politics, but also in the world's public opinion.
Thank you. That's very kind. It's certainly the kind of service that I hope to be able to engage in.
And I think we're down to the last 2 minutes or so of the programme. Now, how can Christians, and many of our viewers, I'd say the majority of our viewers, are passionate about wanting to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, what practical steps could they do in order to help Israel and the Jewish people?
First of all, visit Israel and bring as many of your friends to Israel. It's remarkable how transformative it is, the experience of seeing Israel and being in Israel firsthand. Almost every single person who visits Israel comes back transformed with a deeper understanding of the achievements of Israel and the Jewish people in Israel, and also the complex challenges that we face as we make those achievements. So I think that is one of the biggest things that anyone can do. Come and bring as many friends as possible. And then just educate yourself about Israel. Don't let anyone spread lies about Israel. Counter them head on wherever you see them, whenever you see them. Fight ignorance about Israel. Educate yourself and others about it, about its history. So many people don't understand the historical context of where we are today. And I think the more that can be done, the more we can have people on our side. Ultimately, we are a small country. We don't live in a simple neighborhood. The more friends we have, the stronger we are.
I want to thank you so much for being my guest today on the Middle East Report. And
Thank you.
I've certainly learned a lot today, and I know that a lot of our viewers will. And I just want to express our commitment to Israel and the Jewish people, that you're not alone, that we're standing with you, and we will fight with you. And you're always welcome anytime the year back in England to appear on the Middle East Report. And so thank you for joining me today. And I want to thank you for watching today's Middle East Report. You've learnt today how imperative it is to stand and to win the intellectual battle for Israel and the Jewish people. So thank you for watching the Middle East Report.
This is the place where I feel safe, where I'm supposed to be. I feel you holding me, where we made peace, where all can be. What you feel inside, what we